Good late Thursday, early Friday meteorologist is Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, giving a look at that infrared satellite view here as we're looking off the eastern coast here of Florida. You see some convection. There's also some spin there. And the National Hurricane Center in Miami says there's a 50% chance or so that we will have a system here, a subtropical depression or tropical depression here forming within the next 48 hours. And honestly, that could even happen later on that Friday now off the coast. Now, granted, we're not turning the logo red. I know it's something where we still could, and it might be more for the Carolinas. It's an odd situation. I don't want to, overhype this because if I do that, turn it red, go into alert mode, we're kind of saying, well, the 4th of July is a washout. Now, for some areas, we are going to have problems here, and some of this firework displays will probably have to be pushed back there to a, either a different time in the night or, the next day, next night, as we're looking at things. But other areas will be okay, so I don't want to, convey that we're having a direct impact from a name system or something by going into alert mode. But we're going to have some impacts here. It is the 4th of July now. Let's try to have a happy Independence Day here. A happy 4th of July. I do wish all of you guys a happy Independence Day here on July 4th here, 2025. But we do need to just be very mindful of what could happen here in terms of some organization. That could be a rip current problem here for the eastern coast, if nothing else, in terms of anything, too crazy otherwise, other than just a little bit more of an enhancement of the storms here the next couple of days. We could have had that rip current risk become a problem. A lot of folks trying to cool off at the beach if there's not lightning around, not storms around, and this could really catch folks off guard. It's not ideal boating conditions here as we're looking out toward the Atlantic and the like, and this is a holiday weekend, so we got to take that into consideration. We are, because of some of those factors here, we are very close, and the idea that it could become an actual name system and hit the Carolinas. We are close to turning the logo red. Again, not quite doing it because we're going to have points where things are going to be all right. I don't, want to stress you out here, not, wanting to convey that we're going to have a name system come in to our area or anything like that. Let's go ahead and see the National Hurricane Center update here. This is technically for 2 a.m. It's a little early here. I know as we're looking at things, kind of like to wait for some of the latest updates to come in. And this is a 2-day outlook. Now, now 7-day, they changed that, I guess, a couple years back. It's a 60% chance for development, but 50% within the next 40 hours. So as we're kind of looking at things here, 50% chance of development as we're tracking this, as we're monitoring this. So gotta be very mindful of that, as this could, evolve right off the coast. So we could even actually have some banding. I want to say it's really going to be indirect impacts. Technically, I guess you could call them direct impacts for our far eastern areas here. The convection kind of forms around the center on the western side, but the models kind of convey that it'll form more toward the northeastern side and move more toward the Carolinas here, maybe making landfall later Saturday around Myrtle Beach, give or take. Let's say it's not set in stone because it hadn't formed yet. Really, you saw some, accent trying to get going, but we don't have anything yet. I know subtropical, well, different kind of characteristics here than tropical. Sometimes those systems can really look disheveled on satellite and still get that, classification from the Hurricane Center in Miami. So you see where that X is. It's not necessarily a future track forecast. It's where this could form. Really shouldn't be forming over land, and we kind of had that a while back, 2016 or something. Technically, it was classified when it's over land, but that was a unique situation. But as we're looking here, this could evolve over the water here before, it makes it towards the South Carolina coast there. As we're tracking things, maybe with some type of landfall. Again, some rough coastal conditions. Some of the outer bands, the western sides could come, and impact our eastern counties here. And we'll just have maybe more convection here with the impacts between that low and the daytime heating. The tornado threat would be more on the northeastern side as well. We'd have more convection. Tornado threat pretty low with this. I mean, I guess it's not totally zero, but it just wouldn't really make that much sense to be on that side to get much of that organized threat. The northeastern quadrant is where you would expect that. So maybe the Carolinas, if we get something like that to evolve in a more escalated situation. We are not at all expecting this to become a hurricane. There is a chance some of the models have tried to have it kind of meander closer, to offshore and go further up toward the northeast or something, but even then, it's not become a hurricane. Really not seeing anything like that in the models. Sometimes you'll have outliers. I'm not really seeing anything like that here at this point in time. So that's good news. Definitely good news here as we're looking. And we don't always put a time in the corner when we're doing this, but probably have more, radar/alert updates through the day, with whether there's severe thunderstorm warnings or just kind of watching the weather for that 4th of July. I wanted to make sure we give you that time because things will change with this. But again, right now, 50% chance of development for that cyclone formation here within the next 48 hours. That's gone up at 60% within the 7 days. Really, just a little over 2 days is what that would classify as at this point. So, again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest here on this scenario as we're tracking things. Again, it's very important to stay up to date in that, just for the lightning, really, that we'll have from the enhanced convection locally. Maybe forming on the western side of this. Again, they're not turning the logo red because I don't want to convey this is just, an extreme type of situation. It's not. Granted, we may still do it here at some point even later on this 4th of July, but it's kind of an odd situation in some ways because, this is not far off the coast, but I don't mean to cancel your plans in general, but, on that hyper-local level, that micro-scale level, some plans will, be pushed around a little bit, no doubt, because of stuff moving in from time to time. Not a washout for most, but, some spots will have a problem where there's lightning, a wrong time, having to go inside, or maybe even rain during that time frame for when the fireworks are going to go off. So that's going to happen in some of our backyard more than likely here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things in our covered area, our 62 counties here. So just be very mindful of that here as we're looking at things and tracking things on all the different platforms. So again, very important here to just keep in mind as we're trying to give you guys the very latest information here to protect you, your friends, and your family. Because, these afternoon storms or just storms in general that, develop on that western side, could, as we have most of the days in summer, we have those storms that get pretty strong and some of them turn severe. So just keep that in mind as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. Let me go ahead and pull up our forecast model. It's been wavering because we don't have an organized system yet, so it's having some trouble with this, but let me go ahead and show this to y'all. See it on a broad level. I might zoom in as well. It's kind of an odd thing because when I zoom in, you might not really see it as well, but you really see the spin when I have it zoomed on out some. So just keep in mind, but don't cancel your plans for things like this dark splash bass here. This dark, spangled splash bass as we're looking at things here. But some of the timing here could be unfortunate with the development, and some things may get moved around. There's a decent chance of that here with this dark spangled splash bass in Bradford County. So it's a tricky thing because, again, we can't pinpoint the time. So for now, just, but keep it in the back of your mind that some things will probably have to get shifted around, but some things will probably be all right. That's where we're looking right now. As long as we don't get just too much rain at the fairground or something like that, then that could be an issue. Because, area here sometimes can get a little muddy. But let's hopefully, hopefully things don't turn out like that. So let's just go ahead and keep looking at things, keep tracking things here in toward the weather center. I know that model guidance is what I'm trying to pull up here right now on our other source. So we're kind of looking at some of that right now as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here. This is like 8 a.m. here on this Friday, so 6 hours away. I mean, if you're going to be up then, probably want to go to bed pretty soon if you haven't already. You probably already wanted to get to bed earlier, but as we're looking at things here, you see some convection down there, maybe south of Tampa at 8 a.m. on this Friday, but up here in north central Florida, not seeing too much rain at all in the modeling, and I suspect there'll be some fog around. Got to watch for that based on some of the model guidance. As I'm looking at things, I know we'll take the model up real quick, see the current temps. You see 70s here, 72, Lake City, 75, Gainesville, We're at 74 here east of Stark right now. Seeing that temperature kind of waver a little. There could be some just fog, though. That's going to still be in play around 7, 8 a.m. before hopefully it burns off by like 9 a.m. for that Stark Spangled Splash Bash parade there in towards Stark in Bradford County where we're at, and any other events, as well. You could have issues with that fog if you're trying to get out and about, before when something like 9 a.m.'s parade starts. So meaning that preparation for the parade could be shrouded in some, fog here. So kind of a gloomy start maybe in that, in that respect there when you're thinking about it from that perspective. So again, they're just kind of giving you a look at things. Let's pull up the model guidance again. Kind of see, and I'll put this into motion for a few hours. You'll see the spin to the east. It's trying to organize at 9, 10, 11, noon here. You see some stuff coming there. Camden, Nassau maybe, but that's not going to be exactly out. It's going to look, I'll move it down just a little so you see a little bit further down into towards South Florida with this. This is what our model, the ERRR model anyway, is showing for noon, on this Friday, on this July 4th here. It's 2 a.m. right now, but noon here, just 10 hours away. This is 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then let's go ahead and kind of, at this point, we'll zoom into our area as we have more of those events really get underway. It's a Friday, so that helps with maybe, planning and the like. In some regard, maybe more folks taking advantage of the extended weekend by getting out at these activities. So 3 p.m. you see Western Duval County here, for instance, according to this. But again, it's probably not been that exact spot. That's just how models are. They're a simulation of what could happen, but they're never really going to say exactly what will happen here with this situation. So again, we just want to kind of give you the latest here. Keep updating you on exactly what's going on as we're tracking things. Let me go ahead and keep moving along here. You see 4 p.m. Maybe some problems around Stark. Could be some lightning. Folks may have to get inside. Maybe around 4. That's just a, maybe at this point, possibility. Because it could be 2. It could be 6. You just never know in this type of situation. It could be for a couple of hours in there. This is just a simulation of what could happen. So you see 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You see maybe some problems down to Ward, Marion, and Levy, and Dixie, and Taylor counties, for instance. So then 7 o'clock, maybe it clears out some, which could be good news for somebody for fireworks here. But as you'll see, I looked at this one earlier on, we started to see some stuff fill in toward, areas further north and west, which could present a problem for parts of area for fireworks. As you see here, 8 o'clock, but by 9 o'clock, you see some stuff near the I-75 corridor on this simulation really starting to get us at together there, like around Tipton to Douglas. And then you also see here in Tallahassee, there could be some problems here. But right now, at least on this simulation, Stark's looking pretty good. Doesn't mean it will, hold that way, but it's looking pretty good for that time frame for fireworks in north central northeast Florida. After the accident earlier on, maybe the atmosphere is a little more stabilized, but we have that spin to the east, so things are a little more unpredictable than they generally are. If it's not simulating that right, we could have more banding than we're kind of seeing here if it organizes a little bit quicker on the western flank. But you see some stuff there, that's 9 o'clock, and then as we go to 10 o'clock, you see more of that in and around southwest, south central Georgia, Tallahassee area. That's 11. That is midnight, and you see that looks pretty ferocious there. Bainbridge to about Thomasville or so, and then you see there 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You see the weakening, but let's zoom out. Then you see this accident offshore. This is 3 a.m. It could be getting close, if not already getting named maybe, and the next name on the list would be Chantal if it takes that next name there, and that it becomes strong enough to be classified as a subtropical or tropical storm. It would become Chantal, it would seem. Don't ever really want to, like say the name and then it doesn't become that, because that confuses people for the next storm that takes that name. But I kind of want to at least give you an idea of what could happen, but we don't want to just pre-name this here. But, that is the next name on the list. So I'm thinking it's my gut is telling me, based on everything I've looked at over the years, comparing to now, that we're going to end up having a weak tropical storm or subtropical storm hitting the Carolinas here late Saturday, early Sunday, and meaning we'd have to probably cut in for a little bit of landfall coverage even for that. Pretty weak though, so don't stress out, but could still have some impacts. There'll be a tornado risk up there north of the Carolinas. So that's 3 a.m. on Saturday, 4 a.m. Saturday, 5 a.m., 6, 7, 8, 9. You see some of the outer bands starting to spread into the Carolinas there with what could, and I say could, be Chantal. 9 a.m. tropical storm, subtropical storm Chantal, the C name, the next name there on that list. So you see 10 a.m., you see 11, noon, maybe some of that banding tries to impact our areas. It could be a little bit breezy on Saturday than it would be on Friday, even if we don't have as much rain around. 1 o'clock, we might start getting some of that to fill in later on with the daytime heating mixing in though. 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and some of that wind could be in play. You don't see this very often at all. But let's just zoom in on this here. This is showing maybe gust there as we're looking at things. It could be a little bit higher than what we generally would see, for this time of year without convection around. This is really honestly kind of something I've hardly ever used. I have some different color tables in here, but kind of want to use it now. It's actually, this here would actually indicate more of the sustained wind, I believe, is how I set this up a while back. But for it actually see some colors in here, that is, not the easiest thing for it to do. So it could have, sustained winds here like 15, 20 miles an hour according to this. So again, that's something to kind of be mindful of. Something to be mindful of here for sure as we're looking at that blue. It'd be a little bit higher than that green there on that Saturday. Just going to compare a couple of things real quick on this as we're kind of tracking. Let me just make sure that could actually be some other information here. I just want to make sure I'm looking at this right here. Going to compare things. Yeah, these are just sustained. Okay, I just want to make sure, because I'm looking at my other one, the gusts are a little bit higher with this, it would seem, as it would seem here with the ongoing scenario. Okay. So yeah, gusts to maybe 25 or something on that Saturday. On that Friday, the winds wouldn't be as significant. See, that green really indicates gusts, maybe higher than what this is showing, but this is indicating, the green is indicating sustained winds of 15 knots or more at 4 p.m. on that Saturday, which is noteworthy. Yellow indicates sustained winds about 20 knots or more. So that's kind of where we're at with that as we kind of look at that situation. Again, we're watching our region here. Let me back it up to Friday at 4. Be able to kind of see the comparison here for ARRR wind numbers. So Friday at 4, you can see it's a lot more scattered. You see some yellow like around Keystone, that indicates thunderstorm activity. Not so much, with a cyclone like what we could have on Saturday here with the winds there, where we have some more organization in the pattern in the wind field. So that's 4 p.m. on that Friday. Under 10 knots, where you don't have the light, blue trying us up, or even, well, I guess you could call it darker blue. That's 10 or so knots sustained. That's 4 p.m. Friday. And you see, this is like fireworks time. We have it where we could have thunderstorms in some of those spots. 9 p.m. That orange indicates maybe sustained winds at like 30. Really, that's more indicating we could have, thunderstorms. So that might not be the best characterization. But as we get into our Saturday, we kind of see the spread on in here as we look here. This is 10 a.m. Check that, 11 a.m. And then this is noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 p.m. on that Saturday with some of that wind. As we're looking again, some of those blues indicate sustained at least 10 knots. So we're talking about 15 mile an hour sustained winds, meaning gust. Getting a little bit higher than that even, and towards some of those inland counties even. So breezy, blowing some of the napkins around here for sure for some of the outdoor plans on that Saturday. Not an overwhelming situation. Could knock a couple of tree limbs down, unless the trees are really, in a vulnerable spot. That really shouldn't happen generally. We can always have an outlier, but generally it shouldn't really knock down trees. But could have knocked down a couple loose tree limbs here with the situation on that Saturday. And this is not that big of a deal. We've had way worse. Normally I wouldn't even hardly focus on this. I feel like I'm overhyping it already by showing you this. We have so many people that are going to be outdoors even Saturday that this could have a little bit more of an impact than it otherwise would. There's really not enough in a lot of cases to really cancel anything, but people be standing under trees and then a limb falls and we could have a problem here Saturday, 4 p.m. It's, one of the times we're seeing on here when you have this blue indicating sustained winds of 10 knots or higher. So sustained winds around 15 or so miles an hour, even in that, blue. So you don't always, again, really have that sustained wind, as we look here toward our area this time of year, because you have the different boundaries of the storms. That storms really get going and things kind of fall apart. I know, depending on where you are, sometimes you can have the sustained wind in the Midwest here. This time of year, a little bit more. I'll zoom out and we'll see there's some of that further up there. But this is something, again, I've hardly ever used because generally when we have a tropical system really organized, we have different wind field layers anyway. We can just say in this, it underdo it actually in that situation. So this is like 4 p.m. Eastern on that Saturday, 3 p.m. Central there on Saturday. So you can see some more stronger wind action off the eastern coast. So that's the storyline there. As we kind of track things, you see a few flash flood warnings in toward Texas that stand out here right now for those travel. And it's just a little after 1 a.m. Central out there. You see southeast of San Angelo. You see east of Brady, Texas, here south of Kerrville. So again, a few areas of some flash flooding danger. Even in Bandera County there, we have considerable flooding danger, it would seem. So that's something to note for that area for sure. So again, just continuing to watch things like threatening scenario there. We have a couple warnings up north, severe thunderstorm warning, parts of areas in Wisconsin, like Buffalo County, and the community of Arcadia, Wisconsin. We also have a severe thunderstorm warning in North Dakota. We could have more significant winds, maybe winds to 70 miles an hour toward areas there southwest of Minot. I know years ago they had some really bad flooding there in toward that community, maybe a decade ago or so. Had big problems there, but maybe even a little bit more than a decade or so ago at this point. But 90 mile an hour winds, a camper was blown over even in that area. 93 in other spots. Those, some really significant winds here just a little while ago. You see severe thunderstorm watch in play even for some areas in North Dakota. You see some stuff there on that Canada border. The watch goes to 2 a.m. Central, 3 a.m. Eastern. Minot, Bismarck involved in that. The instability, well, Minot, they're watching this here. This is moving off toward the northeast at 45 miles an hour. The severe thunderstorm warning up there as we're looking toward that community. But temperatures up there, as we look, you can see pretty warm. As we're tracking things up there, you see Texas, you see Florida, you see that viewpoint here on the local level. Let me see if there are any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home here right now, as we continue to give you guys the very latest here. Again, you just want to be paying attention to the weather, be prepared to take action and to get inside from lightning, from heavy rain. As we're looking here, you don't necessarily need to cancel those plans, but be prepared to protect yourself from adverse conditions for a period of time. Now, if you have boating plans toward, areas off of Jacksonville, well, especially, if it's something like you're still on your own, may not be a good weekend for that here. I would advise against that. We have the rip current risk as well. If you're not a strong swimmer, you may just need to cancel your swimming plans there at the beach here over the next few days. Maybe just go there toward the sand, even if you're, you are actually a strong swimmer, and maybe, you still need to be very, very careful, because we have a lot of years, holiday weekends, you have the fatalities here because of rip currents, and with a developing cyclone, even if it's weak, off the coast here, that could still prove Deadly. I've seen it. I've seen it over the years here, folks. Just don't go out in the water if you don't feel comfortable. Go to the sand, enjoy that. Watch the waves. They look, they'll probably look pretty rough out there. But don't take chances. Do not take chances here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. So let's go ahead and go back over to the graphics right now. As we are giving you guys the very latest. This is a formal update late Thursday, early Friday. Don't generally keep the clock up, but because we're going to have to watch things, during this day, during this weekend, things can change. To have it up right now, and we'll have our next formal update late Tuesday, but we're on right now to give you guys the very latest here to inform and protect you and your family. So there's that risk there. 50% chance of development next 48 hours. And if it really evolves here, and makes a landfall because it's actually classified, that happened toward the Carolinas. So as we go ahead and look at the name, next name, as we've talked about Chantal on the list, and this shouldn't be too big of a deal overall for Florida, as we've talked about, or even Southeast Georgia, except for the coastal areas. We have to be careful, but really careful. But still have to watch rain potential to develop here and there across the region. But not really too different from that summertime pattern. But some hurricane prep supplies now tax-free throughout the year in Florida. So that's some good news. As we're watching this again, not a big deal with that lightning threat as always. So it's going to be a little different in a way this year with the tropical moisture around that precipitable, water that we talk about here. Those precipitable water values will be up. So, could have more convection. When thunder roars, you got to go indoors. But Chantal, that next name here on the list, and it's Dexter, then it's Aaron after that. So your tropical climatology peak season, still a little over a month away really from, taking hold later August to early October. Really, when about the 13th or so in August, that's when we're really careful. That's when we had Charlie hit, Friday the 13th in 2004. Of course, we had, that hit. We hadn't had, big storms before that for a little bit. Toward the Sunshine State, big impacts. I mean, we had Bonnie the day before, but that was interesting. It wasn't a hurricane, but Charlie was a Cat 4. It was a small one, but that was April 13th, 2004. We've had, last year Debbie hit. It was very early August. That was a hurricane toward the Gulf Coast, and that was kind of a footnote compared to what happened with Helene and Milton. Debbie was a hurricane and it hit our area, so, very interesting in that regard. But I mean, comparing that to a Dahlia as well the year before, that's still with a footnote compared to what they had there with Helene and Dahlia, but a Debbie was a footnote, and comparing to that Debbie to that and those, and Debbie to Milton, Debbie's still a footnote, but still a big deal last year. Debbie in 2012, we kind of tropical storm here in terms of the winds. That was a big deal because of all the flooding rains we had, but neither Debbie 2012 or 2024 got that name retired, so it's going to be back in 2030. That name on that list, it would seem, in the Atlantic Basin. But Beryl there did get retired. It had Texas as a hurricane, but the reason it got retired, it would seem, is because of what it did as a Cat 5 further down in the ward, the Caribbean there in the Atlantic Basin. But as we go ahead and look here at that rainfall forecast next 7 days, you see the Sunshine State here, Marion County, down toward like Volusia County, Brevard County, a little more rain down there maybe, but even up towards dark, Inter 2 on average expected. We need the rain, but you don't want it during those plans they have outside. And you just got to remember whenever thunder roars go indoors, just hitting too much rain, but again, at an opportune time for the precip here. But a couple inches on average, but some spots will get more, some will get less. This is how it works with these summertime storms. This is a broad brush. And with, this pattern we're in, I mean, organized system, maybe more consistent amounts toward the Carolinas in a way, but if it's kind of just shoveled, it may not really be, really consistent. But watching around Tampa could have some flooding potential there. I know Southwest Georgia, a little less rain up that way, and you can go to clutter.com/radar for an active look at things, whether one in the year or not. You can look at interactive radar. As we go ahead and look here at Florida Drought Monitor, this is the latest now. UNL there, the source, and you can see the map released on that Thursday, the data valid through early Tuesday. You can see toward Marion, Levy, Putnam counties, a severe drought. Still need the rain down there, believe it or not. Even other areas have gotten more precip, and not really in a drought anymore in parts of our region, even parts of Bradford County. But some of these areas still need that rain. I know extreme drought down toward parts of West Palm Beach area there, Palm Beach County. So again, just got to be mindful of that, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. Our covered area, we're always on for any tornado warning storms moving through the 62 counties. We're always tracking things. We're expecting that here next few days, but we're going to be watching severe thunderstorm, flash flood conditions. Probably try to be a little bit, more enhanced with that coverage, especially on this Friday, based on, how things can impact those outdoor plans. So, going to try to go on here if we can for most of the warnings. They don't look overwhelming here because I know so many folks are going to be trying to spend that time outdoors. Very important to stay safe in this. Whenever thunder roars, go indoors. And if water is too deep in an area you're going into, with your vehicle, turn around, don't drown, because we've had some flash flood warnings lately, like around Albany, the night there Wednesday night. And just remember, turn around, don't drown. Some of those roads, we could start to have too much water accumulate with those heavy torrential downpours here as we're looking and as we're tracking. So I know nationally the SBC outlook came out here as we're monitoring the situation. And let me go ahead and try to give you a view on what we're doing with it. Let me go ahead and switch sources as we continue along here. You can see we have a slight risk of 2 out of 5 of severe weather over parts of Minnesota and North Dakota on this Friday. There is a dark green, a 1 out of 5 risk, and a 2 out of 5. There's a 1 out of 5 for some isolated tornadoes around Fargo, North Dakota, up toward International Falls. And then hail-wise, that's in that green, up north there and also out west, toward parts of Idaho, Utah, Oregon there and the like. The wind risk is what really drives that slight though for parts of, it looks like, North Dakota, even South Dakota, and then also Minnesota there. It's more about North Dakota and Minnesota than anything. 2 out of 5 wind risk there. Got to be careful for some of those outdoor plans for the 4th of July in that area, especially there. So Jamestown, North Dakota, I know they had bigger tornado risk here lately than this. A lot bigger, but still with it being the 4th of July, you got to be careful up in these areas. Some areas, people, are going to be in. They're from out of town or out from there with maybe the local conditions here and local roads, and then they could have some severe weather and an isolated scattered nature on top of it. Having to be, learning those roads at the same time. Jamestown, North Dakota, Fargo there, North Dakota, Grand Forks there. I believe where the University of North Dakota is there in Grand Forks as we're looking at things. And then you have Bemidji there in Minnesota, International Falls in Minnesota, all under a 2 out of 5 risk on this 4th of July for some severe weather. So as we go ahead and look back over here, you can see north of Minot, there's a 70 mile an hour severe thunderstorm warning in play now until 2 a.m. Central Time. And as we're looking at things, you see Sioux Falls, South Dakota under a 1 out of 5 risk. Brookings, South Dakota, I know that's where South Dakota State University is. The Jackrabbit, not that many people will be on campus today, but they're under a 1 out of 5 severe risk on that Friday as we're looking at things. And toward Grand Island, Nebraska, you have a 1 out of 5 risk there. University of Nebraska there. Lincoln, they're not under a formal risk, but some thunderstorm activity there. So just continuing to watch things in that regard. You see all the way to the Panhandle of Texas, at least a 1 out of 5 risk in play. So again, just continuing to give you the latest on everything as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. In toward the weather center as we keep on tracking the situation. You see we're in Bradford County. We're 73 degrees right now. Let's look at some of those rainfall totals over the last 12 hours or so towards some of these backyards. I'm going to switch sources once again. We're going to see what we're talking about. And Tallahassee, Albany, not really getting in on the rain on that Thursday, making it hotter out there. They had less cloud cover in those communities, like in Leon County and Dougherty County. We're talking about Lee County, Georgia as well. But east of 75 there, though we have a little bit of that west of it for the south, but in Georgia, especially that 75 marker, all those different markers, the I-75 corridor, the delineation point, we had more rain. And just rain in general. But as you see here, northwest of Fargo, you see, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, and, well, actually, it's Folkestone, northwest of Folkestone there, as we're seeing that we have a couple inches of rain that was measured there on the radar estimates last 12 hours or so. So let me go ahead and put my marker down in some of these. Northeast of Lake City, we had about 2.8 inches there measured by the radar, technology, at least the estimates. Northeast of Live Oak, about 2.64 inches. Let's take you down to Alachua County now. 3.27 inches there southeast of Gainesville. Down toward parts of this area there near the coast, northeast of Horseshoe Beach. South of Cross City, we had about 4.5 inches, 5 inches on radar. It's a lot. And then south of Ocala, look at that, over 5 inches there, close to where Bellevue. We're showing you some of this around Seville with the coverage late Thursday there, and the late afternoon, early evening, give or take. West of areas there, and northwest of Palm Coast, we had over 4 inches there. Pretty noteworthy and significant. A lot of rain down towards central Florida there as well. Look at those totals there. Northeast of Kissimmee, about 5 inches. St. Cloud, about 3 inches there, down toward Osceola County, outside of our covered area. Pretty noteworthy down there. So disrupting some of those plans maybe for, outdoor events, even like at Disney World in that vicinity there around Kissimmee. It kind of depends on where you are, because as you zoom in a little bit closer, maybe not getting into it as much in some of those spots, but as we go ahead and just keep on watching, keep on tracking, it's kind of interesting to look at the grand scheme here on the Doppler technology, the viewpoint, the different views. Very intriguing. Let's go ahead and jump back over to some of the graphics now. That fog safety we got to watch out for here on this Friday morning. I know as you're headed out to maybe, get ready for a parade or get ready for some of those 4th of July plans. If you're, that parade starts at 9. Before it gets going, we could have some fog around for some of those preparing for it. So make sure you slow down and give yourself extra time here to reach that destination. So very important to do that. You just got to be paying attention here in these type of situations, obviously. I know, just continuing to track things here. Make sure your vehicle is as visible as possible other vehicles by using your low beam headlights. I know those hazardous driving conditions here can be an issue due to that low visibility. Leave plenty of room between you and the vehicle in front of you as well. So important to do all of that. So that's kind of the storyline there. Your 4th of July weekend. Here's a view of the Star Spangled Splash Fest here in the forecast. Parade 9 a.m. Bright and early there. Maybe a little gloomy with the fog and the clouds still lingering, but that's not that long away from right now. Medium weather impact for that, because that morning fog could still be kind of lingering right beforehand. We'll see. It's hard to forecast this pattern with a tropical cyclone potential, subtropical cyclone potential. I mean, that makes it even a little bit harder, but could have some of that still around, but probably breaking up by then, around 80 degrees or so with a temperature. Maybe have it done just a little bit, because of some of that trying to break up. 25% chance of shower and storm potential there. I dropped that a little because when that pattern, not generally going to have as much of the storm potential when you have the fog lingering. But 25% chance of showers or maybe a storm. But by noon there, the gates open at the fairgrounds. The parade, not, directly at the fairgrounds there, but the big events Friday, Saturday are. At noon on that Friday, high heat index at times about 100 degrees or so. is what we could reach when we're not having the storms around. So very important to keep that in mind. And but the problem is, it's not just about the heat. We wouldn't have to just go, very high with the impact. If it was just that, you have to be careful, drink plenty of water. But otherwise, at other points, during the day at least, showers and storms could be prevalent. But I must feel like I could have put another category on there for the fireworks time, because even though a lot of the day might have problems, might not be very good out there with the heat and then the storms, by nighttime, I would say that the risk of the weather impact, assuming things don't get pushed off because it's been such a nasty day between the heat and the storms, a mixture of that, the firework time is looking pretty good right now. So assuming those are able to be, getting together there, because, things aren't too crazy beforehand with the weather, assuming that, things are having to get canceled earlier on for most of the day, by the evening, things to kind of clear out based on the latest guidance, and the fireworks, would likely be able to occur there and those shows, whether they are other parts of Bradford County, those would be able to be performed, the fireworks shows. Now, as we go ahead and look towards Saturday there, as we're looking at things here, we're just going to continue to track the situation here in that, the gates open there at noon. They're scheduled to open then. Risk for issues from weather medium to high as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. But it'll be a situation where we're probably a little bit less covered in the showers and storms. It'll still be possible, though, warm, not quite as hot. But as we said earlier on, a little bit breezy, maybe even windy out there. So napkins flying around. Hopefully it's not much more than that, but those napkins, you might need something. I've, seen just, maybe impromptu things like staplers holding them together, or really holding them down, as we're looking here. It's kind of interesting to keep in mind here as we're tracking things with all that. So now as we go ahead and look here toward that extended forecast now, that 4th of July, 70% chance of rain. Unfortunately, again, it's not an all-day washout or likely the tropics, indirect impacts likely, and that does disrupt some outdoor plans. But a named storm could bring direct, more noteworthy impacts toward the weekend, late Saturday, Sunday there, give or take, toward the Carolinas, maybe somewhere around Myrtle Beach, give or take. Not 100% set in stone at this point in time, but something we're watching. I know we're seeing, some different categorizations from the Hurricane Center come together with an Invest 92 here being designated 92L. And then they're saying that it looks like the Hurricane Hunters, with a Hurricane Hunter aircraft scheduled to investigate the system later today on that Friday. So becoming more of a story for the Carolinas, where they may get a weak named system, even with Santola maybe coming their way. But locally, again, because of the outdoor events, it makes it a little bit bigger deal than it otherwise would. Otherwise, you wouldn't notice much of a difference here. But as you're looking here, as you're tracking things, as we kind of just give you the latest here, we're just trying to keep you guys up to date here on what's happening. I know you see that forecast 92, 91 kind of jumps up and down here as we're looking, as we're tracking things. We're just going to keep on monitoring the situation, obviously. And that could be a little bit warmer maybe than average here with those high temperatures as well. This morning low is about what you'd expect. Maybe a tad bit warmer, but not by much. You see those rain chances drop off some after Saturday, but we see maybe a little bit drier come in Sunday through Tuesday, give or take. But by Wednesday, Thursday, more of that moisture trying to inch back in here toward the covered area. So we'll continue to watch all that, obviously. Very important to do that as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. Been on for a while here with this, but let's go ahead and jump back on over to the Doppler. See if there's anything else we need to say here. We have that rip current risk again. Very important to reiterate toward those East Coast beaches here, very dangerous. You know, if you're not a strong swimmer, do not go in the water. You know, I noticed that holiday weekend, I see it time and time again. Yeah, these systems are really not that big of a deal, some pop-up stuff. But then you'll sadly, tragically have a fatality because somebody got caught in a rip current and they couldn't get out. And a lot of times they're not from around here, they're on vacation. They don't understand that the elevated rip current risk can be deadly. There's, you know, rough surf conditions are a problem, hazardous boating conditions. This is a holiday weekend. You know, 4th of July on a Friday, the way it falls this year, you just really got to be careful. Rain hazards include dangerous boating over the waters this weekend for mariners, according to the Weather Service in Jacksonville. A rough surf, elevated rip current. So if in doubt, don't go out into the surf zone, is what the Weather Service in Jacksonville, the NWS office there in Jacksonville, is saying. Very important to keep in mind as we're looking and as we're tracking again. You know, this is the time of year people want to do that. Hazardous boating, though, so will probably be taking hold here. Rough surf, elevated rip current risk here, you know, this holiday weekend. So very important here as we're looking, at the latest here. I know, regardless of development, some of this could be kind of more of a typical pattern in ways, but in other ways a little bit different. So, with the coast areas, you got to be really careful. Could be dangerous, can be deadly here with the rip currents. The lightning can be deadly too, but the rip currents, extremely dangerous. They've been fatal so many times over the years. I don't want to hear about another story, you know, to warn the coast here with a tragedy here that can be prevented. So if you're in doubt, just don't go into that water here. But you can go in the sand, and as long as you don't have that lightning around, you should be all right. So again, that does it for now. Have a great night. Try to enjoy things. I know sometimes we have to go into the precautions a little bit more, you know, than we want to, because it'll be nice for, you know, in terms of the impacts won't really get to most folks here, and that we're not gonna, you know, see a lot of folks maybe, you know, at the water, and then storms won't be hitting everybody at every point. It's in, you know, direct tropical cyclone hit on a holiday or anything like that for our area. This is not a washout for everybody, but there will be impacts here in pockets. So very important to keep all that in mind. So, some ways it could be impacts in scattered zones here more than even pockets, but as we look here, more isolated, you know, than that in some regard. But you see kind of some of that spin here around with that tropical cyclone or subtropical cyclone development trying to take hold here. And that could be an issue, especially for areas north and, you know, east here of our area up into more the Carolinas. So we'll be watching that. Could have our first tropical cyclone to hit, or subtropical cyclone to hit the U.S. here this season in form of a weak tropical or subtropical storm, you know, Santal even. So important to keep in mind. That's going to do it. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe. Enjoy that holiday weekend. We'll be back here as needed. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Again, stay safe.